Welcome to the Something Something Experience Podcast, Episode 1. I'm Michael John Simpson. My co-caster Ash Jones and I started this podcast as a creative outlet to give voice to our passions. While working together, we found ourselves in exhaustive conversations about movies, music, TV, comedy, video games, internet culture, media culture in general, as well as philosophy, mental health, the nature of celebrity, a little politics, and the overall human experience. In this episode, we talk a lot about Marvel versus DC movies, British versus American TV, racial humor, music, the death of Robin Williams, and of course, a little Doctor Who. We think the title says everything, and we hope you'll enjoy listening. So here it is, Episode 1 of the Something Something Experience. Oh, and I apologize for eating during the first 10 minutes. Hello, we are recording. All right.
Hey.
Ash, good? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Mike.
Good.
Here at the Korean place.
Have a good weekend? Yeah, having a little japchae here, and did you have a good weekend?
I did have a good weekend, man. I was.
You were saying you watched a bunch of TV shows. You were mass consuming. Go for it.
My depression got the best of me, so I stayed home, and I watched The Leftovers, episode 1 through 7. I watched The Nick, episode 1 and 2, and I watched True Detective again. Which, I don't know, have you watched True Detective?
I haven't. I do have the whole series. I obtained the whole series, and so I will be watching it. I'm not currently a subscriber to HBO.
I believe the NSA is looking for you now.
Yes, the NSA, or the recording industry is looking for me. I'm a wanted man. I'm a wanted poster. So I do have it. I do plan to watch it. I've seen a few of the key scenes from it. I think you probably know the scenes I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
The one with
the sex scenes with the impossibly levitating breasts.
I know. The gravity on those things is amazing.
Or the anti-gravity, for that matter. I haven't watched the whole series, though, but I am very keen to do so.
I'd recommend it. It's really fascinating, and you know, I'm not going to spoil it for you or anyone, but it's really cool because you think it's one of those shows that starts, you think it's something, and then it becomes something else, and you know, it really gets dark, and then it gets darker, and then it gets darker.
Oh, cool!
And then it gets darker, and
I like the dark.
It's very interesting because one of the things they mentioned in the book at one point, they mentioned something called the Yellow King, in a place called Carcosa.
Oh,
and they don't really explain it, but I started Googling after watching it. And the Yellow King is like early 20th century screenplay that was supposedly drove people mad, people that read it.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So
that's an old kind of trope. That's kind of a mythical trope. There were books and works in Greek mythology and other things that drove people insane.
Like Macbeth.
Right, the Macbeth thing, or right. Or you know, kind of Pandora's box kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I've yet to muster up the courage to buy the screenplay.
Interesting. For fear of madness. For fear of going even more mad than you already are.
I'm pretty crazy.
You said you also started watching Legends, the new Sean Bean vehicle.
That I watched, but I didn't finish. So
Okay.
Honestly, I watched an interview with him, and it got me interested because I like Sean Bean, even though he dies in everything he does.
Right.
Sean Bean dies.
There was an ad campaign at Comic-Con, even though Sean Bean wasn't at Comic-Con. There was an ad campaign done at Comic-Con, T-shirts and posters. We promise, if you watch the show, we promise not to kill Sean Bean off. It was a big thing at Comic-Con.
He's the main guy.
He
can't die.
Exactly. Well, that's what they said about Game of Thrones, and look what happened there. You know.
Oh, true, man.
Yeah.
That scene, I still remember. That was such a shock. That was even more shocking than the Red Wedding, in my opinion, because it's the first time they kill someone off like that, and you're like, what?
It's the first time we've ever seen a show where they really kill off the main guy early on.
And he was in all the promotional material as the main guy.
Right. I mean, like Lord of the Rings, they kill off Gandalf in the first book, but we know he comes back later, but, you know, spoilers, sorry, but you know, he comes back later.
Wait, who hasn't seen Lord of the Rings?
Well, you never know. The internet likes to call spoilers on people, which you know,
if you haven't seen it, you deserve it to be spoiled.
If you're in charge of your own media destiny, I think we're all in charge of our own media destiny. And if you haven't seen something,
hashtag media destiny.
Avoid it. Yes, hashtag media destiny. Hashtags outside of Twitter. So, yeah, it is not very typical to kill off the hero in the first part of the story that. or the first book or the first series of books.
But you've told me that you think that the show has taken a turn you don't like. You don't appreciate it being so grim and well, all the resolutions are negative. And all that stuff.
It just seems so hopeless that every resolution or lack of resolution for every character, as soon as you start rooting for someone, they get killed off, and it's almost become about building up fan expectation and pulling the rug out from it. And I think that George R.R. Martin has some kind of sociopathic nature to him. I'm not saying he's a sociopath, but there's definitely something that lacks empathy with the fans.
Some of the best writers, dark writers,
I mean, you
have those traits. I mean, look
yes.
at like Edgar Allan Poe or H.P. Lovecraft or...
Well, look at Stephen King in the 80s.
Stephen King.
Housewives completely terrified to walk outside their own door for fear of being sucked away into some void somewhere because of something Stephen King wrote. Or fear of walking past a cemetery because they think that their dead cat Fido is going to come back to haunt them or something, I mean, that happened. I remember my stepmom. We were living... I actually became friends with childhood friends again on Facebook with... somebody I knew in childhood who was next door neighbors, and she lives in Europe somewhere now. And we became friends on Facebook, and we were talking about the one thing that the biggest memory she has of us and our family was I was with my mom, and my dad was out of town, and my stepmom was reading one of the Stephen King books, Pet Sematary or one of those, and she got so scared she had to go spend the night over at the neighbor's house because she was afraid to be alone. And
that's
she remembers that. So, I mean, Stephen King had that kind of effect on people. And we're kind of all over the map at this point. We're like films and movies and TV and books,
that's
the
way
our
conversations
exactly.
happen. People. We're not pull any punches here.
No.
The whole point of this experiment, sort of, is to just have it flow the way it's supposed to flow.
Yeah, like a natural conversation,
like
and also to go anywhere and everywhere.
So I was going to say there's an interesting connection there.
Oh yes.
Between Stephen King and True Detective, the topic we started with.
Oh yes.
And that's that the director, Cary Fukunaga, the director of True Detective, is going to he's been hired to write and direct a remake of Stephen King's It.
Ooh.
Yeah. So once you see the show, you'll know how perfect this guy is for that movie, because he's got a few tracking shots that are just, I don't know, the way he composes his shots.
Yeah.
It's super eerie.
A lot of Asian directors, and not to stereotype, but I've noticed a lot of Asian directors have a certain way of evoking an emotion with just one shot of a track. Ang Lee, the first Hulk movie was not good. I mean, it wasn't good, but there was some beautiful, quiet, visual moments in that movie. Where there was one moment, it's so long since I've seen it, but there's one moment where Ang Lee just stops, and he just pulls in and focuses in on a little flower, in amongst all this chaos that's been happening, the Hulk battling tanks, or whatever happened in that first movie, I don't remember, but,
Hulk dogs.
But he takes this moment, and it reminds me of other scenes that were in, like, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and movies like that, where he just takes that moment and revels in the quiet of a moment. It's like the movie in the middle of the
Those
bamboo
are the I guess the nuances that
right.
Because that culture is more more nuanced, I would say, than our culture. And so going back to interesting you mentioned that the slow tracking shots that Ang Lee does, because I think it's, and this has been written about in books, that Akira Kurosawa was actually one of the pioneers of the tracking shot.
Nice.
He used to always do a tracking shot.
I'm not as familiar with Kurosawa as I should be.
Across the forest or something, following the group or whatever, and he actually, he was one of the pioneers that started using that technique. So,
and
pretty cool.
There's other actually American directors that picked up on that, like David Lynch. Like there's the great scene at the very beginning of Blue Velvet, where Jeffrey finds the ear. And the ear is laying on the ground, and he looks, and the camera just focuses in, and there's graphic content warning, sort of, but there's a severed ear on the ground, and there's ants crawling in and out of it, and the camera tracks really slowly and goes down the ear hole, basically, and Splet's sound design, just this big, that big whooshy, rumbly rush of noise
David
that
Lynch
surrounds you as you're you're venturing into the ear hole, and those slow shots like that.
David Lynch is the master of atmosphere. Even
He
his
is-
short stories. He's got
such an auteur, and
man.
it's such a shame he's not making movies anymore. But when he was making,
Did you say he's not going to make any movies?
when he was filming Inland Empire, he did it on handheld video instead of in digital video, and he said, "Film is dead, and I'll never shoot another movie again as long as I live."
That's sad.
And
Because I like to see his films when he actually goes crazy.
now he makes coffee.
He makes coffee.
Yeah, there's David Lynch coffee, and
That's interesting. Music.
it's a damn fine cup of coffee.
Booyah. But
Speaking of which, I just bought the Blu-ray set, the Twin Peaks Blu-ray
it
set.
came out. That's right. It came out. Yeah.
And I sat one day that weekend. I was on my own, and I sat and watched all of the extras from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. And it puts all these extra scenes in it. It was really good. There's a scene where, I don't know if you've seen Twin Peaks or Fire Walk with Me.
I have seen the first few episodes, and I believe I felt this overwhelming feeling of depression, and I couldn't keep watching.
It's a sad story. It is
It's
a sad
really
story.
sad. Just watching that cup break down when they find the body, and and something about the music. It sustains.
Oh, yeah.
It sustains that emotion.
Angelo Badalamenti, he's brilliant. He's
So
amazing.
I just couldn't handle it, man.
I have a lot of his work at home. But there's a scene that wasn't in the original movie from the extras from Fire Walk with Me, and the FBI agent. It's not Dale Cooper. It's the other. It's Chris Isaac, the country, the alt country guy. Wicked Game, all that. He plays an FBI agent, Chester Desmond. What a great,
That's a great name.
A great
Yeah.
name. 40s, mid-40s gumshoe kind of sounding name. But he goes, and he's getting all this belligerence from the local law enforcement in this little town where the first girl's murdered. This takes place a year before Twin Peaks does. And he gets all this stuff, and then he goes back, and eventually they're trying to bar him from taking the body of the girl back to Portland for further medicals. Their facilities are primitive. And he winds up getting into a fist fight with the local sheriff. He takes off his shirt, his gun, his badge, and everything, and then just bah, 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 and I'm not a violence guy or anything, but there is a sense of satisfaction of him just beating the crap out of Sheriff Cable, is his name.
Cable. That's a very
Sheriff
manly
Cable.
name.
Yes, very Cable, and he's a real prick too. But Kiefer Sutherland's in that movie, playing kind of a simple
I do
guy.
remember
Yeah,
that.
playing.
I remember David Lynch is in the movie as well.
Of course, Gordon Cole.
I just don't remember the movie that well because
Oh.
during college, that's when I discovered David Lynch.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I had seen Eraserhead in high school, but I just like thumbing
kinda goes
over my
your
head.
head, yeah.
I didn't pay attention to it. In college, though, I started watching. The first movie I watched was Lost Highway, and that started me on the path of Lynch.
You say Eraserhead, Alan Splett. That's another great. Until Alan Splett died, David Lynch always worked with him as a sound designer, and he's the one who got all these really crazy soundscapes. He did all the sound design for Eraserhead and for Blue Velvet and for like I said, the tracking shot with the ear. And there's one other movie he did. I can't remember if he was doing sound still on Wild at Heart, but I think he might have been right before he died.
That is, I think that's the only David Lynch movie I haven't seen.
Oh, Wild at Heart, Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern.
No, I'm sorry, the other one.
Mulholland Drive.
No, the one with old people.
The Straight Story.
The Straight Story.
Yeah,
that's the
that's
only
a
one.
much later
Yeah.
one. Much later one. That one's after
Yeah.
Mulholland Drive and before Inland Empire, I think.
But oddly enough, my favorite Lynch movie is Elephant Man.
I do like Elephant Man. That's a very, very good film.
I have an affinity towards deformities.
Oh, yeah.
I find
didn't know
that fascinating. I like all those like Freaks, that movie
Oh,
with
yeah,
the
yeah. I
actual
love
circus freaks in it.
Gibble Gobble One of Us. Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah, you just give me a movie where there's a freak and I'll watch it.
I have to say, this is awesome being able to get so in-depth with a conversation. I don't get to have these conversations very often with
that's
anybody
cool.
but you.
Yeah,
Because not very many people are
usually
nerd about film and TV and weird shit as
I try to
I
have
am.
them with my girlfriend, but
I try to have them with my wife, and she
eventually I end up talking to myself.
doesn't have as broad of a viewership as I do on. See, that's the thing. Growing up as a latchkey kid in the '70s, and then also the '80s, was a lot of time in the afternoon spent at home watching old movies because they didn't show. There weren't all the G.I. Joe and Transformers and Rainbow Bright and all the stuff they showed in the afternoons didn't start until 83, 84.
Mm-hmm.
So from 77, 78 until about then, And I didn't have MTV, so there wasn't anything on in the afternoons for us to watch as
Oh,
kids.
wow.
So we were watching old reruns of old sitcoms, Dick Van Dyke and
yeah,
Leave It to Beaver, and My Three Sons, and Donna Reed, and the Honeymooners, and I Love Lucy, and Andy Griffith Show, and Dick Van Dyke Show, and all that. Love all those shows, by the way. And it's also part of why, in my generation, there has had a tendency to be toward having a nostalgia for the things that our parents were into. Things that our parents liked as kids.
Because you guys were exposed to it
exactly,
as well.
because we watched all of that programming as reruns in the afternoon.
Well, I got to tell you something.
And movies, too.
I grew up in the 2000s, but I remember spending a lot of time with my grandparents, and my grandparents used to watch The Honeymooners, I Love Lucy, The Price is Right, all those shows in the afternoon. So after school, I used to watch them with them, and I also kind of... I feel like the warmth.
Oh yeah,
the feeling,
the nostalgia. Yeah.
Whenever those shows come on or whatever.
Well, the other cool thing is there were shows that transitioned from the '60s into the '70s, like Brady Bunch and Gilligan's Island and things like that. That I watched some of the end of those runs of those shows new because they were still on, and also things like Adam 12 and Adam 12, which was an offshoot of Dragnet, which was a TV show based on a radio show, and so this whole history, and then Emergency, which came later than Dragnet, or later than Adam 12, and...
What about the more adult shows like The Prisoner? Do you ever
I love The
seeing
Prisoner.
those?
Oh my God, The Prisoner was a huge... Because I was always watching PBS, because that's where all the British stuff was shown, and ever since I was a little kid, have loved British television. Fawlty Towers, Monty Python, The Prisoner, Doctor Who. I've been watching Doctor Who since 1977.
Maybe you should tell people about your Doctor Who obsession.
I could almost
maybe
start
not. Maybe not.
I could also probably maybe not. I do get accused of being a bit long-winded sometimes, by you sometimes too, and it's rightfully so. I am a talker. That's why I have a podcast. So. Been watching Doctor Who since '77 when Tom Baker, the fourth Doctor with the scarf and the hat, he was the man, and we watched reruns, and they were only on the weekends, and sometimes they were on in the evenings, and then I went to.
This is where I'm going to get lost because I know nothing about Doctor Who.
It's okay. It's you're basically you got this time traveling guy from another planet who just kind of always lands in the middle of trouble. It's a very old kind of trope for a TV show where it's kind of wandering troubleshooter. You had shows in America that were like that, like The Rifleman or Have Gun Will Travel or that kind of thing, but there was less of an emphasis on violence. The Doctor was always trying to stop people from perpetrating violence on other people or oppression or slavery or destruction and so he's kind of this universal hero who is a rebel in his own culture and kind of plays by his own rules. And so then when the geniuses of the BBC, when the first actor started taking ill and wasn't able to remember his lines as well, they said, let's have him regeneration. And that's the reason in '65 when he regenerated into
that's why we have 11,
that's why we have
doctors, or
that's why we have 12. The 12th Doctor starts Saturday starts 5 days from now.
I'm sure next week you're going to talk about that.
Yes.
That
Peter
episode.
Capaldi. I was very excited to have his announcement, and I've been a fan of his for a long time. He himself is an old Doctor Who fan.
You know what I've noticed, and this is changing the topic
That's
a
right.
little bit, but I've noticed that I think American television is taking after British television, and that I've always preferred British TV shows.
Me too.
I prefer them to be shorter and succinct, straight to the point. And I think American TV is doing that now. True Detective, there's only 8 episodes. The Nick has only 10 episodes.
That's a very British thing.
Yeah, and they shot The Nick as a movie, as a 10-hour movie, which is pretty interesting.
Fawlty Towers. You think of Fawlty Towers as this big thing in comedy, in British comedy, in the history of British television. There's only 12 episodes of that show. Yeah. 12 whole episodes. And that was 2 different series. And they were done 4 years apart. Only 12 episodes, but there's so much crammed in, and John Cleese has done millions of interviews talking about how much joke after joke after joke after joke is crammed into all those episodes are so busy and go all over the place, but it's just laugh a minute, and that's not usual for a British show. Later British shows kind of took after that model, but that was the first one that really had that kind of joke a minute thing. And of course Monty Python too, which kind of created the stream of consciousness. Although some of the prelim shows for Python, like Do Not Adjust Your Set and the 1948 show, they started with that kind of stream of consciousness, but a lot of that it was Terry Gilliam's influence of rather than having a beginning, middle, punchline of sketches, beginning, middle, and end with a punchline. Let's just kind of dream sequence it or stream of consciousness into an animation and then into a next sketch or links that way because they were trying to subvert the old traditional. And because British TV, especially comedy, was basically just music hall. It was just people getting up and telling jokes and doing sketches and dun 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 dun.
You know what I want? I want the Terry Gilliam biography.
Oh yeah.
I mean, why hasn't that come out? I mean, that guy's fascinating. You mentioned, the stream of consciousness in Monty Python. Yeah. I think that's where it started for him, and then it led to, all his Brazil, Time Bandits, all those great movies from the '80s.
The Fisher King. One of my favorite Terry Gilliam movies, and of course, the passing of Robin Williams. It was sad. Last week was a hard week for me. Yeah. It was a hard week. I mean,
and we were just talking. I think we were just talking about Baron, the Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Yes, and he played the moon in that.
Yeah, someone was talking to me about that, and then I talked to you about it. Yeah. He was so great in that.
The Robin Williams, another thing I've been a fan of since the '70s. I mean. I was seeing Robin Williams on TV and in other things before he even did Happy Days. Before he was even a one-off character one time in Happy Days, which spun off into Mork and Mindy, which launched his career. But I was seeing him on TV, and he was on the Richard Pryor Show. Richard Pryor had a great, very racially relevant, again, the golden age of the 70s, back in 76, 77. Richard Pryor had a prime time, a black guy in 1977 had a prime time comedy special that he produced and directed and wrote, all with all these wonderful people, Paul Mooney and she played Roz on Night Court. Damn it, I can't remember her name now, but Sarah Bernhardt was on that show, and just so many great people.
Wait, Sandra Bernhardt?
Sandra Bernhardt,
Okay.
And she was a comedian.
Wow, she must have been really young.
She was in her 20s. I mean, they were all in their 20s, 20s, early 30s.
I love Paul Mooney, man.
Love Paul Mooney.
And people hate him because he's really edgy. He doesn't have a filter. He doesn't feel like he has to
Every time
anymore.
he films a special, some white couple gets up and walks out in the middle of the show. And he's all right. That's all right. That's all right. They don't want to know the truth. Let them go. Let them go. And I'm like, yes. I ran into Paul Mooney once. I was on my way to work. I was working at a school in Hancock Park, and I'm driving down Vine Street, which turns into Rossmore. I'm driving down Rossmore, and I'm just about ready to turn off of Rossmore, and I pull up, and there's this Cadillac with the lid down.
Whoa,
the top down.
Cadillac.
He drives a Caddy with the lid with the top down. Big old boat, big old one of those big old '70s Cadillac boats. And I go, holy shit, that's Paul Mooney. And he looks over and he goes, what's your name, brother? And I said, Michael, it's good to meet you, man. I love you. I love you. You and Pryor, and just, you guys are awesome. And he was like, that's good, man. I said, it's nice to meet you. You have a nice day. And he drove off. And he drove off. It was so cool meeting Paul Mooney.
That guy's so cool, man.
Oh, I love Paul Mooney.
Yeah, my girlfriend loves him, too. That's one thing that I feel needs to come back, man.
Racial humor.
Edgy
racial humor.
Yeah.
Racial humor that, Mel Brooks, Richard Pryor, Paul Mooney, guys like that. Even Chris Rock. Well, my Chris Rock story I tell over and over again. I'll do that another time. But people who take racism and just stick it under your nose so you have to smell it and leave it. I see racial humor sometimes when it's done right as like a dirty Sanchez, where it gets rubbed under your nose and you got to smell that shit for the rest of the day. You got
to deal with it.
You got to deal with it.
And it's interesting because nowadays we're seeing an interesting thing where the social climate is such that there's comedians out now doing stand-up in films that you don't even know they're really racist.
Yeah.
Because their whole persona is, I'm this person, I'm old school, and I dress old school, and I'm going to say racist shit. And it seems ironic, but you don't really know.
You don't know.
I wish someone interviewed Natasha Leggero and asked her, "Are you really a racist?"
She's not. She's not.
She's not.
No.
Okay.
Because she does podcasts and she does a lot of online stuff.
So I'm just saying.
And it's a persona. Well, same thing with Queen of Mean, Lisa Lampanelli. Same thing with a lot of these people that will say anything. Again, they are doing it right. They're putting racism under your nose, so you have to deal with it, and sexism and homophobia and all those things. Sarah Silverman, same thing.
So,
all
yeah.
of those people. They're all kind of in the alt school. Where
I'd like to apologize to Natasha Leggero.
Well, first of all, you have to apologize for saying her name wrong. It's Leggero.
Leggero. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm not sorry. Fuck her.
All right. Oh, well. Give me a dark room to Sam Cooke album. Anyway, no. That's
Not
horrible.
like that.
That's horrible. So yeah, comedy. Let's see. Well, another person who did racism, right? Robin Williams, and case in point. I mean, he had a lot of real socially relevant stuff, a lot of political stuff. But it was one of those things where people these days, if you're going to be political, if you're going to be racial, if you're going to be whatever, you have to do it in a way. You can't shove it down people's throats. It's not like the 70s. It's not like the 80s anymore, where if you're like Bill Hicks, a lot of time he was way too political for people, and they get turned people off. Yeah. But I love Bill Hicks. I think Bill Hicks is a god, and I'm really sorry that he died.
A god.
Oh, he's amazing. He's one of my cool. Hands down top 3 comedians of all time, hands down.
I'd say demigod.
Well, the thing about Robin Williams was I got kind of turned off by a lot of the more family-friendly stuff that he did throughout the years.
Probably the 90s,
specifically? The 90s, the early 2000s.
Jack,
right.
Kids.
Yeah, the Patch Adams and stuff like that. No, the last thing I probably was really, really on board for that he did was probably Aladdin. Maybe something later than that, but I don't really remember. But the thing that I've been going back to since he died is his stand-up. I've been going back to I have all his stand-up albums, and I've been watching specials on YouTube and stuff, and I've been going back to the 70s when he started. And going back to that material, because for me, that was what Robin Williams was all about. Mm-hmm. And a lot of other people feel the same way. Now, he went on to do some amazing stuff. Good Morning Vietnam was a good movie. Yeah.
1 Hour Photo?
Birdcage. Oh, 1 Hour Photo.
Disturbing.
Don't get me started. I love that movie so much. And I know a lot of people who hate Robin Williams.
That last scene where he's in the interrogation room and he's saying, "Can I get my photos now?"
Yeah,
and he's putting them on the table.
Yeah.
And you feel how lonely he is. It's kind of crushing.
I've always said that comedians play the best villains because you don't know where they're going to go. You got a dramatic actor playing a villain. It's one thing.
Well, I'm gonna put something on the table right now, and you're gonna probably hate me for it, but I think Dane Cook did a really good job in that movie, Mr. Brooks, where he played a villain. He played a sort of like a serial killer apprentice.
I haven't seen that. I'm not a Dane Cook fan. I'm not a fan of his stand-up. That doesn't mean I would necessarily not be a fan of anything.
But it goes along with your point.
The whole point of
I think you're right.
Because of that, I would be willing to look at that.
I think you're right, man. I think comedians, because good comedians are inherently a little twisted and damaged.
Yeah, they have internal damage. We're so used to him being, haha, Mr. Monkey, grab my junk, but then. When they get dark, then they go dark, way darker than a dramatic actor does, way darker. Because that's the thing. When you're a dramatic actor, you're already down that middle line, and you go dark. You go down that way. When you're a comedian, you're way over to that line, and you have to go way the other side, and that pendulum swings. I'm a big fan of I'm a big believer in the pendulum metaphor for a lot of things, politics and humor and depression and all those things. And so with comedians, that pendulum swings one way happy and swings way hard and fast and long the other way toward darkness, toward depression.
That's an interesting
because they
have
like
to go mental visualization technique to I guess understand things in life. I think everything in life is like a wave. It has ups and downs. That's just the way that life is. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see like Louis C.K. play a dark character.
I would too. I'd like to see him do some acting. I love Louis. That's a great show.
Well, he's in American Hustle.
Yeah. I didn't see. I've seen a couple snippets of that. I haven't seen everything.
He's really
good. I
would
like to see him play like a real
twisted
fucked up
person. Yeah,
somebody. That would be awesome.
not a pedophile, because I feel like he already looks like a pedophile. I want him to.
He would probably agree with you.
I want him to challenge himself a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's a great actor. I mean, he almost did like a sitcom before his first show.
Yeah.
And then he had he made a movie in the 90s when he was in film school that is now being released.
Yeah.
So
there's another movie or two where he's got a couple scenes in it or something. I saw the little scene where he plays the guy. He's like sitting on that little bench in a room or whatever. And is it Dallas Buyers Club or whatever the movie, or American Hustle, where he's getting chastised by somebody or fucked with, somebody's fucking with him or something.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper fucked with him.
Yeah. Speaking of Bradley Cooper, Rocket Raccoon.
Oh, man, that movie.
Oh, yeah.
That movie.
Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, I've been reading around, and I've been listening around. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I listen to, a lot of stuff like that. People whose opinion I respect about movies and about TV. I haven't heard a single bad thing about Guardians of the Galaxy.
Not one, man.
Haven't heard anything bad about that movie.
Because there's nothing bad about that movie, man.
Yeah.
It's perfect. And the thing, it has rewatch value. I've seen it two times already.
I know so many people who've seen it 2, 3, and one guy I know wants to go see it a 4th time, and they loved it that much. I want to go see it in the theater again, too. I liked it that much.
It was Indiana Jones in space.
Yes, I agree with that.
I hate to reiterate what everyone else is saying, but that's really like a good. I found it's the best comparison.
The movie had a swagger to it. It had like
the music,
a wink in the music,
yeah.
And a wink in the eye, and a swagger to it. A cocky walk. It had that. It had that going on through the whole thing. James Gunn's a great director.
He's great.
I like him a lot. I like a lot of his little. There was a zombie movie that he did, and there was a couple of other smaller projects that he's worked on. I think he was the perfect director for that movie, and I hope he's on board for number 2.
He's already writing it. I think he tweeted out. I think the weekend after it opened, he tweeted out a message saying, "I'm working on number 2."
What's our time?
We have about 21 minutes left.
Oh, okay. I think we're running out of space here. A little bit. Anyway, but we're still going. So
he's working on number 2. He's already writing it. Marvel's given him, they've already made a public announcement saying that he is going to write the second one, direct the second one. He's coming back. I'm a huge Marvel fan, but I'm not going to expand too much on that, on theories about movies and stuff like that. Marvel movies, because I think it's way too redundant. Everyone's talking about those, but I'll say one thing, and that's that I don't want to see Howard the Duck in the second movie.
Oh no! I hope that was just a cute little cameo, and I think that's probably what it was. I mean, we all know what a piece of shit Howard the Duck was.
I think I should mention something, since we are recording a podcast. I think it's safe to say, wouldn't you say, that anything we speak about, we're going to spoil.
Yeah, it can happen. As I said, we're all adults. We're all adults.
So
we're all responsible for our media autonomy. We just are.
Yeah. So if you hear us talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, be aware we might spoil it.
And you haven't seen it, or it's something you have or haven't seen. We're going to talk about shit, and that's the way it's going to be.
It's just the way it is.
And
but yeah, the movie was perfect, man. I liked all the characters.
Once we get around to recording intros and writing little blurbs, we'll list the things that we talk about, so you can skip an episode or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
we should do that for sure. Yeah.
But I think that well, see, I have the opposite perspective. I was not a big Marvel fan growing up. I mean, I knew Spider-Man, and that was about it, really. And a little bit of, the cartoons on Saturday, a little bit of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. But mostly I was a DC guy, Batman, Superman, blah, 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 blah. Wonder Woman, Super Friends, all.
Go.
Okay.
So that's the, what was I?
I was not a Marvel fan, so seeing all these new movies... these new Marvel movies. It's an all brand new introduction for me. I was excited about Guardians of the Galaxy because all of my friends who are hardcore Marvel heads, Marvel geeks, were excited about it. That was enough to generate buzz for me. I know a lot of people who are total nerds about all kinds of stuff, and so I know a lot of people whose opinions I trust a lot. And so when people totally nerd out and are super excited about a project, it gets me on board for it.
You know what I like about Marvel?
I never heard of Guardians of the Galaxy until a year ago. Never heard of them until a year ago.
But you know what I liked about Marvel and the way they're making their movies. You don't need to know about the comic books at all.
You're right.
And that's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want to, go really obscure and alienate your audience, but you also don't want to go and like completely ignore the source material.
Right. But then I've also heard from you and other Marvel fans that there's enough stuff in there that's dead spot on, that was just done perfectly to make it enjoyable for the total hardcore fans too.
Yeah.
So
true.
that's great, and that's what I think where Warner's falling short. They're too busy making movies for people who haven't enough of this, and they're as Eddie Izzard would say, they're pissing with the myth. They're fucking with the source material.
They are, but I think they recently announced like their slate, like basically they copied Marvel's plan of releasing a movie or two movies a year and just announcing them for the next 5 years. And I think finally DC is going to have like a unified universe, and they're going to go that route.
I hope so, but I hope they can do it right, because the one thing that we've seen with Warner Brothers and DC properties in the past is you put too many people in the movies, it doesn't work. Batman and Robin, which I will never watch again as long as I live.
You know what, my friend?
Biggest piece of shit.
You know what, my friend? You just watched a movie that had every fucking character on screen at all times. It was cluttered, and that movie's Guardians of the Galaxy.
But it was Marvel.
Yeah,
and they know how to do it.
They did it great.
But that's why
they can do it. DC can do it.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
I hope they do it.
So far, they haven't been since the 90s. They have proven that, or have not demonstrated that they have the ability.
Batman and Robin. That's the worst movie in history.
And I have to say, I'm not looking forward to Superman versus Batman. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to Ben Affleck. I like Henry Cavill, but it didn't blow me away. And I'm not happy with their choice of Wonder Woman. And where's our goddamn Wonder Woman movie? Where's our female-led movies?
They don't. It's almost like they don't have faith in their own material.
It's so stupid.
Even in this age,
they're still making movies for dudes, and that's what it boils down to. And it's really unfortunate because there's so much great, rich material out there.
Well, Marvel's doing the same. They're not really reinventing the wheel either. They haven't released like a Black Widow movie.
They haven't done a Black Widow movie. They
haven't done like a Marvel Girl, which there's been some talk about that. I think they're going to wipe the Wasp out of the Ant-Man movie.
I think if DC was smart, they would do a rated R Power Girl movie.
That'd be cool. But you know what I want to see though? Now that Marvel has the rights, I want to see a rated R like Blade movie.
Yeah, that would be good.
With Wesley Snipes.
Again,
because he's not that old.
Nobody would be a better Blade than him. Nobody would be able to play Blade.
I know the Daredevil show's coming.
Going back to you were talking about it. Who's going to play Pennywise?
Oh man, Tim Curry.
Tim Curry.
He has to come back.
He can't though. He had a stroke last year.
Oh.
He's out of commission.
He's like he's bedridden. He can't.
I haven't heard anything out of his camp. Not that I have but I haven't heard or read things. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are Rocky Horror fans who were used to seeing him around at Rocky Horror events once or twice a year, and nobody has heard anything from Tim Curry's camp in a year-ish. Wow. He had a stroke last year, so he can't play Pennywise. As far as I know, he's not going to be able to play Pennywise.
They'll find someone. I just don't. I hope they don't do. And I trust in Cary Fukunaga. The guy's a great director. I think he's becoming an auteur. I mean, you're not familiar with him, but he did another movie called Sin Nombre, which is about. It's basically the immigrant story. These South American people coming to the States, and all the groups they encounter, and it's really amazing. And then he did a movie called a movie based on the life of Jane Eyre, which was amazing as well. Then he did True Detective. But what I don't want him to go and mess it up like they've done with every 80s horror movie remake, where they just mess up the thing that gets people to the movie, which is the main guy. Like they did it with and you know who I blame? I blame Michael Bay's production company, Platinum Dunes, because they seem to be involved in every one of those remakes.
Michael Bay, it's just I'm not. Although I have to say, regarding 80s horror remakes, there are a few gems out there. Rob Zombie's first Halloween was awesome. The second one was not good. But the first one was great. And also the Friday the 13th one that came out that same year.
That was okay.
I liked it.
Yeah, fucking Jason Voorhees.
But it was a reboot of the first. It was the first one.
Do you like the idea of Jason Voorhees basically being like a weed farmer? That's what he was. He was protecting the weed. Yeah. He's killing people, killing teenagers that wanted to smoke pot.
He's protecting the weed. He's the scarecrow. He's the what am I thinking of? He's the monster that protects the cash crop or whatever.
Yeah, man.
It'd be funny. You're growing weed and a little Groot pops up and starts dancing and smiling at you, and then frees us when you're not looking.
Guardians of the Galaxy and Friday the 13th crossover.
Oh, there you go.
What? I mean, Jason did go to space.
That's true.
Don't forget.
Jason X.
Yep.
Jason X. Wow. Yeah. I never saw that, but I heard it. Horrible.
Dude, I saw it in the theater when it came out, and I went in knowing that it was going to be total garbage. So I just had fun with it.
My favorite Friday the 13th movie, and this is a horrible, horrible thing to say. I mean, obviously I like the original because Kevin Bacon, but seeing Kevin Bacon get an arrow through his neck, that was fun. But my favorite Friday the 13th movie is, I can't remember if it's part 5 or part 6 with Susan Voorhees.
Oh, yeah.
But for horrible, horrible reasons. Horrible, horrible boy reasons.
I know. Hey, I went through that too.
There's two reasons I like that movie.
There's 2 reasons.
It's the same 2 reasons why I like Katy Perry. Anyway,
was that the one in New York?
No, that was the one in. No, it was in the same woods still, right around Crystal Lake up in New England somewhere.
Jason goes to New York. I think it's like the 5th one.
Yeah. In the city. I don't think I ever saw that one either. I think that was the 7th one. Yeah. Jason Takes Manhattan or something like that.
Some shit like that. At that point, you just saw it for the deaths.
Yeah.
Just like Freddy Krueger movies.
Yeah, that was for the body count.
Yeah.
You just sat there with one of those old clickers that the bouncers use at clubs. They get one in one hand and one in the other. One in, one out. They can always check the balance of who's in and who's out.
Do they even do that anymore?
They probably have a digital thing on their phone now that does it.
Yeah. I don't think bouncers care that much anymore.
Depends on where you work. The clubs I worked in, they did that. I was a DJ in the 90s.
Oh, yeah. I only go to, like, small clubs in L.A. Because I like to check out local bands.
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, there's this new band called Sidewave.
Sidewave? I've heard of them.
Really? Because they're really new. They've only played 3 shows.
I've heard that name.
It's one of those names. I think they're going to be, like, around, you know.
What kind of music?
They play 90s. It's definitely, like, throwback, like, stuff like Cave In and Shiner and Failure and all those bands.
Right. So kind of alt rock with a slightly
dreamy kind of like
psychedelic
shoegazy
kind of twist to it.
Shoegazy,
kind of American shoegazer music.
They do the harmonizing thing where they tune down. They tune down the strings so that they're both the same note, and it sounds like a wall of sound.
Yeah, I love that.
I mean, they're awesome.
Catherine Wheel and My Bloody Valentine.
My Bloody Valentine.
I love all that. I love shoegaze music. Love it. Lush and all those. Yeah.
Only 2 bands.
Early Blur too. Well, Early Blur was a mixture between shoegaze. No, they were never shoegaze. I'm wrong.
No, they were never shoegaze.
They were Manchester started up.
They were slow, but they were never shoegaze in my head. There's only 2 bands you should really care about: Slow Dive and My Bloody Valentine.
Slow Dive. Yeah. Souvlaki Space Station. That's a great EP.
It's my favorite, man.
That's a great EP.
And there's a band, actually, from the 90s playing this Friday. It's called Slint.
Yeah, I've heard of Slint.
Yeah.
Speaking of shoegazer bands, do you know Ride? Vapor Trail?
No, I don't.
So strong,
I've probably, and you've mentioned this to me, and I forgot to look it up.
I reposted that video onto Facebook today because it's one of those songs that when it comes on, it just brightens that hour for me.
It's really good. Yeah. I love the music.
Awesome. So, well, I think this was probably a good first episode. Probably about time to wrap it up. We've been going for about an hour-ish, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Well, good. So we're going to try and do this on a weekly basis, and as soon as we get all of our shit together, we'll get it up and get it going, and there will be a blog and an announcements and this and that, and we'll get going. So this is good for the very first episode of...
the SSE.
The SSE XP.
I mean, this is also... open to you guys. If you have any suggestions of topics that you want us to talk about, we're not geniuses, but we have no life and we're nerds. So chances are we probably know, and we can expand on it. Maybe something you'd like to know more about or whatever.
Yeah, we'll get the blog going. We'll have an email address. We're gonna have all this stuff lined up, and everybody we will welcome feedback.
Yep. It's a two-way thing. It's a conversation.
It's a multi-play thing. So, all right.
We don't want to just hear ourselves talk for an hour every week.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Maybe we do. Maybe that's why we're doing this.
Yeah, that could be. All right, everybody, have a good week, and we'll be back again next week.
The Something Something Experience podcast was conceived and produced by Ash Jones and Michael John Simpson. Intro music, Ways to Change Faces, and outro music, Scorpio 37, was written, produced, and provided by the talented Sebastian Cesari. Email us at something2xp@gmail.com or find us online at something2xp.wordpress.com or at something2xp on Twitter.